3 inches overnight. Adorable. Also, expensive. Sell their pint.
right, y'all. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to go over. Sorry y'all missed me the past couple of days. I had to go 6 hour trip there and 6 hour trip back to go get stuff that belonged to my pops from him passing away on AIDS. But anyways, we have a lot to go over today. We have breaking news about the Iran and the United States peace deal. We have talks about, well, let me just say, the news that's coming out of Washington right now is that Trump has completely rejected the peace deal, or I'm sorry, the the deal that Iran has offered. Of course, we knew that was going to happen because they're giving some bullhickey 12-point peace deal that's not going to work out for the United States side, especially after we've already put a buttload of hurting on them, But let's go over to Iran real quick and see what's going on the cameras. You can see there ain't nothing really big or major going on the cameras as of right now. I'm sure probably strikes are probably going to be starting. I mean, as of right now, it could be today, tomorrow, this weekend. Definitely by this weekend. If things continue the way they are now, I'm sure they're probably going to start hitting them, or something major is about to happen. But let's find out. Let's see what's going on for the past 24 hours of the news, and then also we'll hop back on and we'll go over what we missed over the weekend as well. But and also want to apologize for the stream the other night. We was having technical difficulties, and I figured out what the problem was. So, but anyways, let's get to the news real quick. We have a lot to go over, so we don't want to.
Revelation in the news. We have heard that U.S. officials have rejected an absolutely absurd Iranian counter proposal today, and it looks like the talks are off, and now strikes appear to be back on the menu yet again. We've also seen that major gunfires erupted across Tehran and the Iranian capital.
Oh yeah, and just a heads up, y'all, we do have live call-ins tonight. Phone lines are open. Phone number is 540-251-7687. Call in. Give a shout out to your loved ones if they watch the show. Hopefully they do. If not, go ahead and send them a share or share the link to them to the channel so they can actually get on board. We're going to try to continue with the call-ins. So let me know what y'all think in the comments of what y'all think about the call-ins, and let's get some call-ins coming in. We have not got zero. Look, I'm an honest person. We got 0 call-ins so far. I'm interested to get the first one, so let's try it. But anyways, again, call lines are open, 540-251-7687.
And also, Iran attacked the Gulf states today with drone swarms, but the Gulf states are trying to keep it a little bit low-key, but they were full-on attacked. And we have all that news and more, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world on our Sunday night fundraiser for Nova Ukraine, as we have been able to hear of significant developments around the entirety of the world coming out of Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia, including the United States of America and the North American continent over the course of this day, basically everywhere in the world. We have been able to hear very significant developments that the United States of America has finally gotten the response by the Islamic Republic of Iran over the U.S. requests and offers for peace, and the Iranians used it as an opportunity to then demand unconditional surrender by the United States of America again. The President of the United States has now gotten onto Truth Social and has stated that the Iranians have been playing us for clowns and have been trying to buy time to further fortify their position inside the Strait of Hormuz and to also further fortify their position as a nation on the global stage. We've also been able to see that while that was going on, some Gulf state nations low-key kind of got their fade messed up today by a couple of drone attacks, but it does appear that air defenses were able to shoot down most of the incoming Iranian drone attacks over the course of this day inside the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait. However, some drone attacks were able to hit a vessel that was moored off the coast of Qatar near to the major city of Doha, which does appear to be one of the confirmed attacks that we were able to see so far that did cause damage. 2 vessels were confirmed today to have passed through the Strait of Hormuz, including one Norwegian-flagged vessel heading to China and a Qatari vessel that was also able to pass through as well. However, the Iranians also are threatening to blow up British and French warships if they attempt to enter the area, and there's been some significant explosions and air defense fire over a larger area of southern Iran, all the way from Dezful within the southwestern area of the country, and all the way over to the port of Chabahar to the southeastern area of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We have also been able to hear that Netanyahu confirmed that one of the vessels that was stopped and seized by the United States earlier on in the U.S. blockade was in fact carrying weapons from the People's Republic of China, and the People's Republic of China was attempting to arm and assist the Islamic Republic of Iran in its continued war against the United States of America in the hopes that they would be able to maim, wound, and kill U.S. service members throughout the broader area of the region. While Netanyahu wasn't able to say much more than it was carrying Chinese weaponry, that's all we needed to know that we were originally correct on our analysis back then, that those vessels were definitely carrying Chinese contraband. We have also been able to hear from the Iranian government that they are still making threatening statements of war against the United States of America, and we've also been able to report as well that it does seem that the United States is getting, of course, very geared up and incredibly geared up to be able to conduct significant strikes on the Islamic Republic of Iran and the resumption, or I guess you could say round 2 of the war with Iran here in the very near future. We have also been able to hear inside of East Asia that the People's Republic of China is awaiting the meeting with the President of the United States, which will be coming up this Wednesday, and we've also been able to see that Taiwan is now forward deploying HIMARS rocket launcher systems, or MLRSs for short, into the areas of their smaller islands directly on the Chinese coast, allowing for their HIMARS to actually fire at Chinese staging areas before the Chinese might be able to launch an attack. A pretty interesting move and a provocative one, mind that, of the Taiwanese. The North Koreans have also amended their constitution today to state that if Kim Jong-un is ever assassinated by some sort of a foreign power, they will conduct a retaliatory nuclear strike against whoever conducted the assassination or the attempt of an assassination on Kim Jong-un. I have a feeling that they wouldn't really have to worry about that too much. That guy's so fat that a bullet would probably bounce off of him. But we've also been able to hear additionally inside of Europe that it does appear that there's been other major developments within this area today. Significant air corridors by the United States Air Force have been conducted into the Middle East, and we've also seen that the Armed Forces of Ukraine has reported that the Russian Federation has violated the ceasefire, the unilateral Russian ceasefire, a couple of thousand times today, and I'm not even kidding on that. Quite literally, a couple of thousand ceasefire violations have happened over the course of this day from the Russian Federation, which is showing that the Russians did not enforce the ceasefire that they declared unilaterally on their end at all today, and the war was still going on every front in every area over the course of the past 24 hours. We've also seen that in the meantime, Grozny in the semi-autonomous region of Chechnya did come under attack once again today, and we've also been able to report that the Ukrainians have been inflicting incredibly high losses onto the Russian Federation's armed forces and are making sure that their spring offensive has amounted in an absolute failure. We've also heard that inside of the area of North America, the United States has been reported to have conducted 25 intelligence flights around the state of communist Cuba since early February, and we've also been able to hear from U.S. lawmakers that the information they have gotten on U.S. weapons stockpiles is wildly concerning and is showing that the United States is running low on most critical munitions types in most every category. But we have a lot of news to cover over this day, and we are going to be making sure to get on into all of this news, starting with our largest stories first and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And it is now time for us to move, as everybody knows, to the Strait of Hormuz to begin the coverage of the day. We have been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has finally given its response to the United States of America about our peace offer or ceasefire offer, which largely included some significant demands by the United States of America, including restrictions on their nuclear weapons program, their ICBM programs, and also for them to relinquish their control over the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians finally answered the U.S. offer, and we have been able to hear that this is the proposal as of today. This is what we were able to hear from Al Mayadeen as far as what the Iranians told them the demands were from Iran to the United States. For the United States to end the blockade, for the freedom to export oil from Iran, a ceasefire in Lebanon, the U.S. must remove all of its sanctions, they must give de facto control of the Strait of Hormuz to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the United States must unfreeze all Iranian assets around the world. Basically meaning...
Holy cow. It's almost like Iran never intended to negotiate, because this sounds like their initial opening offer that led to the entire war starting right here. It's almost like we've come full circle.
It really does seem like we've come full circle. And also these demands, folks, amount to the Iranians demanding everything from us and us having absolutely no hand in leverage over them for the indefinite future, but Iran is given control of the strait entirely, meaning that they have all the leverage on us, our allies, and our sphere into the end of time, from what we can tell. This is an absolute insult of an offer by the Iranians, and this is once again showing that the Iranians have played the United States like a fiddle, like we were talking about just a few days ago, and have been doing nothing but buying time. It appears that some people are finally becoming a little bit aware of the obvious, as we were able to get the following statement from the President of the United States today, after the Iranians returned with their counteroffer of unconditional surrender for the United States. Iran has been playing games with the United States and the rest of the world for 47 years. Delay, and then finally hit pay dirt when a former president became president. He was not only...
Now, just to let y'all know, the call lines are open. The call lines are open. We have live call-ins tonight, y'all. The number is 540-251-7687. Again, the number is 540-251-7687. Call lines are open. Please feel free to call in. Send a text. I'd be better off if y'all want to text, just go ahead and drop down in the chat box or a comment box on the platform. But if y'all want to call in, the call lines are open.
Good to them. He was great, actually going to their side, jettisoning Israel and all other allies, and giving Iran a major and very powerful new lease on life. Moving on from all the political statements. Let's see. They had never seen any money like this and never will again. It was taken off the plane in suitcases and satchels, and the Iranians couldn't believe their luck. They finally found the greatest sucker of them all in the form of a weak and stupid American president. He was as disastrous as another president, and for 47 years, the Iranians have been tapping us along, keeping us waiting, killing our people with their roadside bombs, destroying protests, and recently wiping out 42,000 innocent unarmed protesters and laughing at our now great again country. They will be laughing no longer. So this was the first statement of the day that came out from the president after the whole deal that the Iranians gave us back, which was basically saying surrender to us and we'll finally end this whole thing. And it appears that it was just generally a rant for the larger part.
Yeah, also, by the way, I love it how the U.S. military has like this massive like billion-dollar budget, but yet, according to this post right here, when the U.S. delivered pallets of cash, they also stuffed the cash in old suitcases from your grandmother's closet. It's like, why are we stuffing cash in old suitcases? Like, that image is just so silly on its face. It's like, I think they delivered the cash in like a C-130, like on a pallet, like did you use like a forklift to pick up? I don't think it was in old suitcases.
Yeah, I don't think so, but it largely does appear that the president was tweaking this morning after the Iranians gave their flat-out denial basically to the U.S. terms and then counter-offered with absolutely insane terms that we were supposed to meet to be able to end the war. The Iranians also then further elaborated that they are rejecting any dismantlement of their nuclear facilities and proposed using the next 30 days to negotiate nuclear issues. So after the Iranians have spit in our face today, now they're saying, let's talk about something that we're never going to budge on as far as our position, because every time we've ever gone to them about anything, any slight giving up on their end to our terms, they say no to it all when it comes to nuclear. So now the Iranians are saying, let's waste another 30 days talking about nuclear issues that neither of us will be able to agree on. I think y'all are starting to get the trend here that the Iranians are just trying to buy time at this point, which is what we all know. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But the Iranians are now saying, let's talk on the next topic that we'll never agree on. We've also been able to hear that according to some other statements, this was also another statement from the President of the United States. I've just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President of the United States. So now it does appear, generally at the moment, that the President is stating, for one, that he is not happy at all with this, and also he rejects the demands completely. We have now also been able to hear a little bit more about Iran's demands from the United States, which also included war reparations, apparently according to some sources, which is according to Iranian state media, so take that into a grain of salt. We're not really sure if they actually presented that, but that's what Iranian state media is saying was presented to the United States, and that was really the only additional detail that we got from Iranian state media that wasn't included in other international media sources about the offer, the counter offer that the Iranians have made today. We then also were able to hear that oil did start to spike after the president stated that he wasn't happy at all with anything that was said or done by the Iranians today in their counteroffer, and the price of WTI crude oil spiked all the way up to $98.45 right after that statement was made, showing that at the moment, what you can expect going into Monday, that things are not going to be looking that good on the oil market again, and the price per barrel of oil is going to be remaining somewhat high, as it usually has at this moment. We have also been able to additionally hear, as an additional confirmation, that the price of crude is rising globally. The price of WTI crude is $98.13, and Brent crude rose as well by 2.76% to $104 a barrel before the markets have even opened for trading again on Monday. So we are getting the understanding that the oil markets are already reacting to this and are seeing that there is really no chance in hell at this point of the Strait of Hormuz opening anytime soon or the situation being resolved. Given the fact that the President of the United States has stated that this is absolutely unacceptable and the time for Iran to basically run everybody's pockets and run the world like a fiddle as fools is going to be over, a lot of people are starting to get the idea that time may have run out for the diplomatic phase, which has been going on far too long at this point, for about a month, and the time for war is most likely going to be returning. And a lot of people at the moment are talking about what the U.S. is going to be doing after the Iranian counterproposal that came out today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so today we've heard this shocking news that U.S. officials rejected Iran's absurd counteroffer, which demanded reparations, all kinds of sanctions being lifted, and pretty much everything except for the one or two things that the U.S. needs them to do, which is to unblock the Strait of Hormuz and also to give up their nuclear weapons ambitions. Iran wanted everything, but they didn't want to address the main issues, so a little bit strange with that. It was really shocking to me because I've been hearing this whole time from U.S. officials that the talks were going so well behind closed doors, and now all of a sudden this is a major shock today. Apparently it's not going so well, but what happens next? 66% said U.S. attacks will resume shortly on Iran, while 22% said the U.S. will resume negotiating soon, and 6% said the U.S. actually might pack up and go home actually. So I'm going to say this. It's a little bit hard to predict because before I could have sworn that attacks were going to restart yet again, but the U.S. did the opposite. They started giving Iran the leverage they needed to stall and keep basically hijacking the Strait of Hormuz. So what the U.S. should be doing is attacking immediately. That's what they should be doing. But there are a couple of caveats, though. On Wednesday, the U.S. president will be meeting with Xi Jinping, and China is currently heavily involved with this Iran-U.S. situation. They're heavily involved in it, and I'm not so sure if they're going to start attacking Iran before Wednesday because they don't want to mess up that meeting with Xi Jinping. That's a major deal for some reason with the U.S. president. I'm not sure why, but he really is desperate to meet with Xi for whatever reason. So they'll probably wait until after Wednesday, but I would imagine after that, there's a decent chance that attacks could restart. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I also have to hedge my following statement with the fact that the U.S. administration is very unpredictable in what they're going to be doing day to day because they generally do not have a running plan day to day of what they're going to be doing. But with that out of the way as a disclaimer, I would say that anyone in their reasonable right mind, as the President of the United States, would decide at this point, considering that they're still at square one and they have made it nowhere at this point with the Iranians, that diplomacy or any attempts to negotiate our way out of this clearly isn't going to be working because it hasn't worked yet. They've been trying it for a month. They have tried 20 different ways of threatening Iran and 30 different ways of negotiating with Iran, and threats and attempts at diplomacy are not working. So clearly, that is never going to work at all. We can try this another 500 times, and we're still going to be where we are right now, with the strait being closed, and the U.S. economy and the Western world continuing to be starved of oil with each extra passing day. So at this point, anyone with a reasonable mind would decide that strikes would have to happen, and strikes would have to be imminent, because the Islamic Republic of Iran is not going to relinquish the Strait of Hormuz at a minimum in negotiations, and if negotiations fail, the next step is war, or the continuation of the war that we had already started and paused at this point for about a month. So I would have to tell y'all, that should be what we're seeing. If we were working off of a rational administration, which I would hope at this point we are seeing that it will become fairly rational, the attack should be resuming shortly because that's really our only option at this point. Trying to go down the diplomatic path again is not going to work, and they should know that by this point. So I hope that...
And also, I've been seeing people all day long, like there's this growing, like loud movement apparently that people are saying the U.S. should simply pack up and go home from the Iran war. I don't know if people get this or not, but that's not an option anymore. We might have had that option previously before Iran solidified control over the strait, but now that they've mined the strait and they still have their fast attack boat fleet, simply packing up and leaving is not an option. If we pack up and leave, we are pretty much making the United States destined for economic ruin at that point. because Iran's not going to give up the strait. So at this point, we're trapped. And the stupid part is Iran is the one trapping us in the area. They're the ones doing it. So, I mean, that time for packing up is over with. I'm not sure why some analysts out there are saying, let's just pack up and leave. That seems to be overlooking a massive problem with the Strait of Hormuz. So at this point, it's not really an option.
It isn't an option. It never is an option in any reasonable world, because I'll explain to you all the difference between us staying here and doing nothing right now and packing up and going home. There is none. If we sit around for a couple of months with the whole U.S. military over there and we never do anything to them, that may as well be the same as packing up and going home. So it is a pretty fanciful, if not outlandish, sort of a fallacy to say this whole thing will end if we pack up and go home, because right now we're not bombing them, which is basically equivalent to packing up and going home. And what kind of results are we getting at this point? The ones that we don't like, that are leading people to make the claim that because we don't like what's happening, because the Iranians are just outright controlling the Strait of Hormuz, maybe packing up and going home and not even attempting to challenge their control of the strait is going to improve the situation. That's ridiculous. That's literally like saying, I don't really like it. Like that would be like someone like a crackhead saying, gee, I don't really like how bad crack is doing my body, so I think the option is to do more crack and maybe that'll fix the problem. That is that kind of logic. That isn't going to work. You clearly have to go in and clear out the strait. That's the only option that we have to try and turn this around, because right now doing nothing is leading the strait to be closed, which is causing economic damage. Packing up and going home is leaving the strait to be closed, causing economic damage. The only chance we have at reversing any economic damage or stabilizing the damage is forcibly reopening the strait through military action. That's the only one that has any chance of success at stabilizing the economic situation we're in right now or reversing it. So that's clearly the only one we have. And if the U.S. administration was working off of reasonable analysis or reasonable strategy and foreign policy, then they would start military action soon to once again reopen the strait. But moving us on out of that, we have also been able to hear of some other developments within the area today, which have been quite interesting. The South Koreans have actually conducted an investigation on the HIMARS, which was actually hit and damaged by prior Iranian attacks. And this is one of the few times we've been able to see the extent of the damage that was caused by an Iranian attack in up-close photography on a vessel that has been hit when it was attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz. This picture appears to be showing some internal area of the machinery space at the stern of the vessel just below the superstructure, and we can see that the entire area has been raked by a significant fire, and it does appear that most everything in here that was electrical has been completely burned out from that ensuing fire. We also were able to see the visible damage to the hull, and it was immense. This hole in the in the hull, which is very hard to say because it's hole in hull, was 7 meters wide by 5 meters tall. That is huge. By the way, a meter is about 3 feet. So if you do the math on that, that's about a 21-foot wide gash, and it's about roughly 15 feet tall from the bottom of the impact zone.
That's massive. Now, I know that y'all can get the concept of how massive that really is. That is a massive hole that they put inside of this cargo ship. Phone lines are open, y'all. 540-251-7687. We got no calls yet tonight. Let's get some phone calls coming in, y'all. We got the phone number on the screen on scroll. So, yeah, let's get some phone calls coming in. We are interested in hearing y'all's voice.
To the top and from side to side, that is a pretty significant area of the hull plating to have been blown away by an explosion. And I would have to be honest with y'all, I don't think that this was a drone that hit this ship. It may have been an anti-ship missile, because that is an incredibly large gash in the side of this vessel. We can even see that the explosion was so large, it literally ripped the plating off of the keel and just started to peel it away. You can actually see the ribs of the keel right there at the stern of this vessel. So this is a fairly significant amount of damage. And we can also see as well, in an additional picture here, that it shows what appears to be maybe a secondary impact point just above the primary explosion. which is also showing us that may have been a drone, but it appears that the initial explosion may have been caused possibly by some form of an anti-ship missile, but we're not entirely sure on that, and we're still trying to gather more information. And I believe the South Koreans are also trying to gather more information on what size of an explosive would cause this sort of damage. This vessel actually, I believe, was abandoned by the crew after it was hit due to the fire raging out of control within the machinery spaces and largely leaving the vessel to float adrift, and this is also showing us the kind of firepower that Iran is leveraging at neutral allied ships that are attempting to pass through the area, and they continue to fire at and heavily damage or destroy indiscriminately. In the midst of this, however, today there was a slight change. 2 vessels actually did make it through the strait. We were able to hear that one of them was the Norwegian-flagged Stella, which appears to be on its way to China, from what we can tell, at least according to its public information. It's leaving from what appears to be the United Arab Emirates and heading on its way to China. So it did make it through the strait, interestingly enough, without being fired upon. And it does appear that we may be seeing this one arriving in China. We believe that the only reason as well that the IRGC allowed this one to pass is that its end destination is the People's Republic of China. And so we're not sure if it paid a toll, but they did allow it to pass through, and we believe that the U.S. will also be allowing it to pass through because the vessel did not come from a port of origin within the Islamic Republic of Iran. So this may be the first ship in weeks that we've been able to see make it through the Iranian blockade and then the U.S. blockade on both ends. We've also been able to see that another ship did appear to make its way out of the area today, as we got reports that a LNG tanker, the Al-Hariyat, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, was also able to make its way through, apparently through the Larak toll booth route. According to the information we have, a Qatar-affiliated liquefied natural gas carrier loaded at Ras Laffan earlier this month is now navigating the Iran-approved northern route near Qashem and Larak Islands, according to marine traffic data. If the vessel makes it through, it would be Qatar's first known LNG export via the Strait of Hormuz since the beginning of the war in February. At the moment, we haven't been able to hear of any incidents involving the vessel, so it does appear that it has been able to make it through. And if we take a look at ship traffic, we might be able to see maybe the Al-Hariyat somewhere down here, and it doesn't appear that I can find it really quickly off the top of her head, and I would pull it up on the search bar, but I don't know the spelling well enough to be able to do that quickly. So we would assume that at this point it has most likely made it through, because we're not seeing any vessels within the strait at the moment, or any vessels that have been stopped. So it does appear that that one has been able to make it through at this point. We have also been able to hear additionally that satellite photography did come out over the course of this day, showing us 4 IRGC speedboats that were just south of the seized Jin Li, which was the Chinese tanker that was carrying Iranian oil that the Iranians then seized because they claimed it was violating Iranian sanctions for it being a Chinese-flagged vessel transporting their oil. But we did get to see that it was surrounded by fast attack boats the other day, and we were able to see their wakes indicating a high rate of speed, and there was a decent amount of them actually surrounding the vessel, more so than just 4. But once again showing us that the Iranians are still swarming the Strait of Hormuz and are largely controlling it uncontested at this moment in its entirety. At the moment, a lot of people are talking about when the United States may resume full-scale strikes, considering that everybody does believe at this point that there are going to be strikes coming around the corner by the United States. The question is not if strikes are going to happen, it's when. And Matthew, when are people thinking that strikes are going to be happening against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and when are you thinking they're going to be happening as well?
Okay, so that's the question right now. Because, of course, like I mentioned earlier, on Wednesday, the U.S. president will be meeting with Xi Jinping inside of China. And apparently, the China Ministry of Foreign Affairs just apparently confirmed that information and said at the invitation of President Xi, the president of the United States, Trump, will pay a state visit to China from May the 13th to the 15th. So it's apparently going to be happening. That apparently is confirmed. So do you think these attacks on Iran will occur after the meeting or before the meeting with China? And it looks like, if the poll right here would cooperate, it looks like it messed up here. 47% on the poll said no, there will be Iran strikes after the meeting, while 40% said yes, Iran strikes will happen before the meeting. And I would say on this one, it is fair to say that the U.S. will probably wait until after this meeting with Xi Jinping, because they don't want to do anything to jeopardize it. Today, Netanyahu went on an interview, I think it was with CBS News possibly, or 60 Minutes, and he was scared to even mention mention anything about China's involvement with the Iran war, which to me suggests that the U.S. told him to keep his mouth shut about it, so that way it doesn't jeopardize the meeting with Xi. So the U.S. doesn't want anything to get in the way of this. Apparently, this is very important to the president for some reason, and I would say the chance of attacks before then on Iran, very, very slim. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would be with the 47%. I don't think there's going to be any strikes before the meeting. They're going to happen after the meeting. The United States, for some reason, is putting a lot of significance, or more so, not the U.S., the president is putting a lot of significance on the meeting with China, and has been for some time at this point. And that's leading us to believe that there won't be any sort of attempts to be able to muddy the waters with that and make that meeting not go well, because for some reason, we're trying to make it go well, which I do have to say, folks, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because if we remember last year, we got in a tariff war with China that went up to the point where China and the United States were putting 275% and 500% tariffs on each other before both sides backed off. So generally, I don't know why we're trying to put a heavy emphasis on chumming up with the Chinese, because just last year, we were literally in the middle of a trade war with them, basically. And we've also been continuously dissing on the Chinese, basically, throughout the entirety of last year. And not only that, outside of those two actions taken by the office of the President of the United States, the Chinese are a natural enemy of the United States of America. They're not a country in the middle of the road. They are literally the leader of the enemy sphere that is not aligned with the West. China is the economically most powerful and militarily most threatening nation that we currently see as an adversary in the present day, and they have no intention of being positively aligned or allied with the United States of America in any point in the near future. So I don't know why we're trying to get into any significant talks with the Chinese. It doesn't really make any sense at all, and we should be trying to get our companies that are currently offshored in China offshored elsewhere, and possibly move them into countries that are more Western aligned, or at least neutral to us, possibly like Mexico or other countries along those lines. So before we move on into the rest of our news, though, and outside of this poll, it does appear that we're getting some information on Flight Radar 24 that there is an F-35 Lightning that is declared a general emergency. It's squawked a 7700 at this moment just over the UAE.
Oh, wow, that's new, actually. I was tracking this just a second ago. I was tipped off from another viewer about this. It just declared an emergency, literally right now when you clicked on it. It was not declaring an emergency when it popped up before. I was thinking, why is this thing turning on its transponder in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz? Because that's usually not the way they operate. They don't do that for obvious reasons, for operational security. They want to keep their location secret. But this one turned on its transponder. Now it's declaring an emergency. I want to let y'all know, this is the second one today, the second F-35 that's declared an in-air emergency in just the last 24 hours in the exact same area, by the way. So that's very unusual right there. I don't know what's causing that, if maybe it's being attacked by the Iranians perhaps, or maybe it's just simply a bad series of malfunctions, but that's the second one in just hours.
Well, its transponder is on, and one thing that's interesting is just it did a very sharp maneuver within this area. Now it's continuing west once more over what appears to be, at the moment, Oman, and it's heading, well, now it's doing more zigzag maneuvers over Oman, and it appears that its altitude is remaining somewhat consistent. It's saying that its vertical speed is changing rapidly, as you all can see right here, but we haven't seen any change in its barometric altitude yet at the moment, and its ground speed appears to be exceptionally slow, at least according to what we're seeing right now by the ADS-B transponder data. Now it is once again heading even further over west at this moment. And this is a fairly interesting sort of an occurrence right here, because we don't know what is up with the F-35s declaring general emergencies within the area. This is the second one, mind you, all of the day. I didn't put the other one down on the map for the day because I was going to just summarize that happened, but we're actually seeing that it's now happened a second time again in real time right now.
Yeah, that's concerning, I will say, because we've seen a lot of aircraft declaring emergencies around this general area. And of course, we have heard that over the course of the last 24 hours, Kuwait's been attacked by hostile Iranian drones, Qatar's been attacked by hostile Iranian drones, and the UAE's been attacked with missiles and drones. So, despite it not getting much coverage by mainstream media, the Gulf states have been being attacked pretty much nonstop by the Iranians. That's restarted a lot, and they're not really saying much about it. So now we're seeing more U.S. Air Force aircraft declaring emergencies on top of that, after it appears to be it came from the Iranian coastline to a large degree. So that is concerning, to say the least. I wish we knew more about it, but sadly, it's all we know.
Also, I see some people bringing up the possibility that it looks to be some sort of an attempted missile evasion. This F-35 right now is at a range of 120 miles from the Iranian coast, and there is absolutely no air defenses that we know of right now from Iran that could reach that far. So generally that would throw that idea out of the window for the larger part. And on top of that, we already see that on public transponder, there are two KC-135s far closer to Iran, probably only 60 miles or 50 miles from their coast, with transponders on that don't appear to be conducting any evasive maneuvers whatsoever and are continuing their normal orbits to be able to conduct refueling flights for the other combat aircraft that are in the area. So this thing evading air defense fire, at least at this point right now over the UAE, is somewhat unlikely. This may be another...
Also, by the way, could it be Iranian electronic warfare equipment doing this, like causing it to declare an emergency? I'm not totally aware of why that would cause a problem with the jet, like where it has to declare, a 7700 like this. But could it be something like that? Because I see some people speculating that it could be, but I mean, clearly there's a lot of jamming going on. I mean, like the transponder data is all over the place. The Iranians must be jamming the hell out of the whole area, I'd imagine. But could that possibly cause a problem mechanically with the jet?
Generally, I don't believe so. I think that most of these aircraft are built in with some level of redundancies to be able to handle electronic warfare to some extent. They do have backup systems that don't require any use of electronics or computers to at least keep up a minimum ability to keep the aircraft flyable. So I would kind of doubt that at the moment. I don't think that that could cause any significant issues. And also, electronic warfare only affects the aircraft when it's within, say, the cone of an electronic warfare or electromagnetic sort of a system. And considering that this thing is well out of that area at this point, or we'd have to assume that it's well out of that area at this point, and other tankers that are far closer to Iran, basically in the same trajectory, are not declaring general emergencies, that most likely wouldn't be an issue for this aircraft. It may be that it's run into some sort of engine issue, like say the engine is starting to run exceptionally hot, and maybe it's for some reason overheating. There may be some sort of additional faults or errors with the aircraft, because there is always the chance, especially with military aircraft, and historically this is the case with every airframe, that they can run into just out of the blue technical issues. Like this aircraft may have been putting a significant amount of flight hours on its engine over a very short amount of time, and this could have led to enough strain on the engine that it's either overheating or it's starting to see some sort of reduced abilities or reduced thrust, which is setting off alarms in the cockpit, and this is leading it to return.
Yeah. Maybe so, but at the same time, though, I mean, looking at something a little bit more simplistic on the analysis side of things, what is an F-35 doing coming back from the Iranian coast? And also, we're assuming that the thing was hanging out and patrolling the Iranian coast. That's what we assume. But this thing could have been over Iranian airspace, for all we know. It could have been doing a mission inside of Iran. We just simply don't know where it came from. Is it only turned on its transponder when it was about halfway across the Persian Gulf to a large degree? So we don't know what this thing was doing. Because it seems a bit strange the thing would just be lurking around without a specific mission in mind. I'm not sure what else it would be doing.
Well, it could have been providing air cover, because we do know that there is a continuous air cover or air screen that has been conducted by the U.S. and Central Command over the Gulf of Oman for about a month at this point, and that's also why we've seen that in prior instances, the U.S. Navy has used its F-18 Super Hornets to strafe the engine rooms of some of these tankers to stop them when they're trying to break the blockade, is because there's almost always, at least from what we can tell, maybe a dozen or so, give or take, combat aircraft that are in the area almost at all times, providing air cover for the destroyers and other U.S. forces that are conducting the blockade on the blockade line at the entrance of the Gulf of Oman. And generally those aircraft are within the Gulf of Oman itself, not within the Arabian Sea, from what we can tell. So that's probably what it was doing there. Like, that's the most likely answer. It could have been doing something else, but the high likely answer, the statistical chance, would be that it was within the Gulf of Oman providing an air screen to the destroyers on the blockade line. But beyond that, I wouldn't really know much more as to why this thing is declared a general emergency, or where exactly it was before it declared the general emergency.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on this one and see where it goes, but it's certainly interesting to say the least of this many aircraft emergencies that's close together, so I'll have to keep an eye on it.
And we will generally have to keep an eye on this one and also see where it lands, which would be an interesting thing to know, because if it's attempting to land at the closest airfield possible, then there is a decent chance that this thing has definitely run into some sort of engine difficulties or engine issues. If it flies pretty deep in and it goes to, say, like Prince Sultan or whatnot, then that means that the emergency wasn't that pressing and they didn't have to land immediately. But right now it's keeping a fairly steady altitude at 15,000 feet and is apparently proceeding at a speed somewhere around 400 knots. So it is well below, it's well below transonic. It's well within the subsonic range at the moment, which maybe suggests, generally, folks, I would say everything's lining this one up to most likely be engine troubles, because they're not stressing the aircraft by keeping it up near transonic speeds, which is between subsonic and supersonic. It's also flying in a straight line, what appears to be towards an airport at Abu Dhabi, and now we can see that it looks to be descending possibly, but we'll have to see if that keeps up. And so if it's landing somewhere around Abu Dhabi, this definitely is most likely some sort of an engine issue that the aircraft is having. And it looks like it's actually going in for a descent right now at an airfield at Abu Dhabi, so most likely engine trouble.
Yeah, probably so.
But moving us on out of this breaking news story that just happened on air right there with another F-35 declaring a general emergency, we have also been able to get a few more developments out of the Strait of Hormuz. We did get a statement from the Iranians today that threatened British and French warships. According to Ibrahim al-Fakar, we will immediately strike French and British warships if they approach the Strait of Hormuz. They are not welcome. Oh, well, I didn't know that the British and the French were trying to get in there. From what I had heard, they really weren't. But apparently now they think that they might be, so they're going to go ahead and preempt it by threatening to try and blow them to pieces. I don't really think the British and the French had any intention of even going in the Strait of Hormuz, but apparently we'll have to wait and see if that ends up changing or not. Meanwhile, in most of the Gulf states have been under attack once again today. According to an official statement by the Kuwaiti Ministry of Defense, the Kuwaiti Armed Forces detected a number of hostile drones inside Kuwaiti airspace on Sunday at dawn and dealt with them according to approved procedures, meaning that they shot them down. According to additional statements, we also were able to hear that there were around several drones that were intercepted on Sunday, May 10th. The Kuwaiti Army announced that it intercepted a number of hostile drones inside Kuwaiti airspace. Officials did not specify whether the drones were launched from Iran or by an Iran-aligned group operating in the region. Nevertheless, this did confirm an attempted attack against Kuwait today, either by Iran directly or by one of their affiliated proxy forces inside of Iraq. We've also been able to hear that the UK MTO reported a general emergency near to the area of Doha, Qatar, as the UK MTO received a report of an incident 23 nautical miles northeast of Doha, Qatar. The master of a bulk carrier reports being hit by an unknown projectile. There was a small fire that's been extinguished, there are no casualties, and there is no reported environmental impact. We were able to hear additional reports from the Qatari government that the Qatari MOD stated that a commercial cargo vessel in the country's territorial waters, which appeared to line up with this UK MTO distress signal, resulting in a fire, and Kuwaiti Armed Forces detected a number of hostile drones within Kuwaiti airspace, which is the other prior incident that we were talking about just a moment ago. We then were able to hear that inside of the UAE, they then reported that the Iranians had conducted a direct attack against them, and according to their own publication, this is it right here in Arabic, but I'll be reading y'all the English translation here on the side. The UAE Air Defenses engaged 2 drones. The Ministry of Defense announced that on the 10th of May of 2026, the UAE Air Defenses engaged 2 drones coming from Iran. And since the start of the blatant Iranian attacks, the UAE Air Defenses have engaged 551 ballistic missiles, 29 cruise missiles, and 2,265 drones. No cases of martyrdom, injuries, or deaths were recorded in the past hour, and thus since the start of the blatant Iranian attacks, the total number of martyrs has reached 2, in addition to the martyrdom of a Moroccan national civilian contractor with the armed forces. Meanwhile, the total number of fatalities have reached 10 civilians of the following nationalities: Pakistani, Nepalese, Bangladeshi, Palestinian, Indian, and Egyptian. The total number of injuries since the start of the blatant Iranian attacks in the state of the UAE has reached 230 injuries from multiple nationalities, including Emirati, Egyptian, Sudanese, Ethiopian, Filipino, Pakistani, Iranian, Indian, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, Azerbaijani, Yemeni, Ugandan, Eritrean, Lebanese, Afghan, Bahraini, Comorian, Turkish, Iraqi, Nepalese, Nigerian, Omani, Jordanian, Palestinian, Ghanaian, and Indonesian, Swedish, Tunisian, Moroccan, and Russian citizens. The Ministry of Defense affirms that it is on high alert and readiness to deal with any threats and to firmly confront all targets to the undermining of the state's security, thereby ensuring the preservation of its sovereignty, security, and stability, and protecting its interests and national capabilities. So this did confirm that they did come under attack once more today by the Iranians, and they had to shoot down 2 drones as a result. And this also went on to summarize as well all of the casualties and fatalities that have been seen so far inside of the UAE amongst all groups for multiple different reasons during the ongoing skirmish. We also were able to see what appears to be some sort of a video that appeared to have showed one of the drones getting shot down, I believe. But we'll show this clip here at the moment. And there's the drone. And here comes the air defense. That drone's actually moving quite fast. But there it goes.
Is that a real video? That something about that doesn't sound or look right. Like there's that, like the sirens sound like the sirens out of Israel, like with the Iron Dome system.
This is why I said it might show it, because also I'm pretty certain, like not to be Captain Obvious here, but I'm really certain that the UAE doesn't have any pine trees. Like there's a lot of pine trees in this video, and like it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, you know?
Yeah, something about this is not looking right. Like, I can't quite place it, but something about this kind of like rings AI, like in the back of my head. Like, I'm not believing this one.
Let me see, folks. Are there any pine trees in the whole of the UAE? Unless if you're in like a park area, it doesn't really seem like there would be. And also on top of that, out of everything they pick pine trees. I mean, like, what kind of simpleton would pick a pine tree? I mean, there's like gazillions of them. But let me see here. Here is
also, by the way, that drone is moving too fast. Iran doesn't possess jet drones like that. They don't have those, and that's moving fast even for a jet drone. What we just saw in that video, and also we never even saw the interceptor come in to hit it. It just blew up out of the middle of nowhere. There's something that doesn't seem like that's legit.
I don't think it is either. That's why I was like, I'm kind of heavily doubting that this could be the case. And also, folks, like, there is no pine tree forest in the UAE. I mean, look at that. Does that look like a pine tree forest? No, this is like one of the only green parts of the country, mind you all. Honestly, Matthew, I feel like they ought to rip this thing down and replace it with a data center. I bet you it uses about the same amount of water.
Yeah, probably so. A good data center that could provide a little bit more intelligence on the matter.
Yeah, maybe so, honestly. Or cute cat videos. But moving us on out of that dubious clip, which I'll be removing because I don't really trust it enough to even put it on the map, we're now going to be moving on down and into the area of Dubai, as we were able to hear that apparently 2 luxury yachts today caught fire simultaneously in Dubai for unknown reasons. Iran did not launch missiles, so we don't know what the reason for the fires were, but it may have been some form of a drone attack, because we do have to remember, folks, that videos and pictures coming out of the UAE that are published by people in the UAE showing Iranian attacks are subject to imprisonment. So that's probably a reason why we're not getting a lot of indication as to why these yachts are on fire. But I also had to say, folks, that influencer woman that does those Instagram videos about here in Dubai must be having a really hard time. I guess the next video is going to be, here in Dubai, you can bring your yacht to get blown up. Like, man, it's like...
Also, it's like, what's up with there's the UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar. They're treating all these attacks like it's super secret. Like they're being very, very quiet about all the attacks. They're not letting videos come out about it. They're trying to act like they're not under attack, but all 3 of these countries were attacked today. They were all attacked, and they're all taking all these legal measures to try to punish people for making it known that they're under attack. So, I mean, that's cowardice to the extreme. Not only are they not responding to Iran for attacking their country, but now they're trying to cover up the fact that they're even basically under attack by the Iranians at all, which is kind of insane. Also, like, is anybody believing this BS? Iran clearly hit their ships right here. Like, that's obvious. These things just didn't blow up and catch on fire like that out of the blue. That's silly.
Wow, that's crazy. These yachts just spontaneously combusted. And then you just have like your British yokel from the Middle Ages pop up and go, these things happen from time to time. It's like, no, they don't. They don't happen from time to time. Yacht fires are almost unheard of, especially around the UAE. Like, I haven't seen a single one in the whole time we've been reporting the news here for 4 years. So I highly doubt that this is anything other than an Iranian attack, and the UAE is trying to cover that up. Also, on top of that, I find it funny that they only put out the stuff afterwards, after the ships are well and truly on fire, almost down to the waterline. And they're like, oh, that's crazy. I guess this is just a little incident that the fire department has to deal with. Like, it's just a normal occurrence. This whole thing is BS. They got hit by an Iranian drone, and that's that. We also were able to hear, additionally, that earlier in the day, just to cover this, there was another F-35 that squawked the 7700, and just to look at the current one right now, It is definitely engine trouble because it is landing right here at the Al Dhafra Air Base, showing that it has gone to the nearest U.S. air base that's being operated in the UAE, and it is attempting to land as quickly as possible. So this is showing us that it was some sort of a pressing engine issue, possibly even getting close to engine failure due to stress or some sort of a mechanical failure inside of the engine components, which has forced the aircraft to declare an emergency and then go to the nearest air base to land because it may not be able to press onwards back to wherever it came from, which is probably another air base deeper inside the Middle East. So that appears to be the case for this one, and I'm believing that was mostly the case. Oh, it looked, it turned off its transponder right there. It's gone now.
Yeah, hopefully it landed.
Hopefully. Well, I mean, it definitely is landing. Like, it's definitely landing.
Well, I mean, it could have crashed. That's a possibility as well, the transponder is going off like that.
We're gonna crash, but I hope not. Like that would not be good for us. That's quite a lot of money, and also a pilot that would be in danger. So I'm gonna assume that it probably just landed. But outside of that, though, I would assume that that's also what happened with the last F-35 that had squawked at 7,700 earlier today. Moving us on out of all of this, though, we've additionally seen some pretty interesting air activity over the region, including some of the following flights: a couple of KC-135s. Another Bombardier E-11 electronic warfare aircraft, and another KC-135. The KC-135s are fairly normal, but the E-11 is something that's quite interesting, and we're keeping an eye on that one because we don't know what it's really there for and what they're trying to use it for, because it was over southern Iraq again today, and it appears to be showing that they may be directing some sort of electronic warfare at some group inside of Iraq, maybe around that super secret Israeli base that everybody knows about now that we also had video of today. But moving us on from that, we also got to see that video of the super secret Israeli air base that was set up inside of southern Iraq. So here's that clip. You see them looking over their attic. There's some light in the distance that appears to be coming from the facility. And there was an additional clip that I didn't put out here today, but they actually had a video of two C-130s going in to land at this airfield that's been set up in southern Israel. So we can confirm this thing does exist.
You mean southern Iraq?
Yeah, southern Iraq. Whoopsie daisy. Did I say Iran?
You said southern Israel. Now, are these the guys that got greased for discovering the place right here? Because these look like a group of forces.
This is the Iraqi army, but this video was apparently made and published today.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, there's that report floating around that apparently some forces found the base and they might have possibly gotten greased, maybe for finding it possibly. I'd also heard that apparently the U.S. had warned the Iraqi forces not to go in this part of the country, which is a strange thing to tell a foreign government. You can't go to a certain part of your country or bad things might happen. So sort of a strange thing to do, but apparently they didn't listen. And then some of them might have gotten greased possibly, but maybe these are different ones possibly.
I think these are different ones, but they're all down there again looking at it and are like, yep, that's definitely an airfield. That, mind you all, once again, the Iraqi government didn't give permission to be set up. So, looks like they're all quite interested about this whole airfield inside of Iraq. We've also been able to hear that there were explosions in Erbil as well today, but there was no other information that came out rather than the fact there were explosions. Additionally, we've also been able to hear out of Israel some fairly interesting things. For one, a call between the president and Netanyahu ended today, which may be showing that they're getting back on the concept of getting to war. And we've also been able to hear that, according to Netanyahu, which sadly we cannot play that clip, don't play it. But beyond that, Netanyahu stated that China gave certain amounts of support and particular components of missile manufacturing to Iran, but he won't say any more than that. Oh, that's interesting. Seems to me like that's kind of saying that ship that the U.S. Navy seized about a month ago may have been trying to not only violate the blockade, but also was trying to help the Iranians keep fighting the United States, courtesy of Uncle Xi over in China. So,
I'm so shocked. Could have never have guessed. It's really wild to me though how the West goes to such efforts to cover up the fact that both Russia and China are actively engaging in a proxy war against U.S. forces in the region. And it's wild to me because they've been trying to cover up what Putin's doing. They're running interference actively for Putin and what he's doing in the Caspian Sea. Putin is sending ships with weapons loaded to the gill through the Caspian straight to the top northern part of Iran. He's been doing that. Also, China, they've been sending weapons too, and we believe, I mean, the president even alluded to it himself when they said the Marines boarded that one vessel, and then they found a little ancient secret from China apparently on board the ship, but he wouldn't say exactly what it was, but he kind of alluded to the fact that it was weapons on the ship. So now they've got Israel even scared to talk about it. You know, if Israel's scared to talk about something, you know they're really trying to keep it quiet. But that's apparently they're both doing it, and everybody's trying to cover it up.
Man, I just saw someone in the chat say Israel's stirring the pot to keep the USA in the fight. Well, I mean, we were the ones who seized the ship. We knew what was on it, and we clearly did because we almost stated it to the public what was on it, and then we refrained. So it's not really like the Israelis are trying to keep us in a fight, and oh, God forbid the Israelis suggest that a natural enemy of the United States is trying to arm and support another natural enemy of the United States. That's clearly so absurd. The Israelis are just obviously stirring the pot by making the enemies of our nation out to be our actual enemies. God forbid. Like, God forbid we ever think that the Chinese are an enemy of the United States, because we wouldn't ever think that otherwise, would we? But anyways, outside of that, a lot of people are also hearing about that little news coming out about that, about the Iranians making a new threat. On top of all this news that we just got a moment ago on the Israelis definitely alluding that the ship that we seized a while ago did have Chinese weapons and apparently components on them, the Iranians also threatened today the following. No one is making plans to please the President of the United States. The negotiating team develops plans that respect only Iran's rights, and naturally, it would be better if the President of the United States was not satisfied with them. They then also threatened later that they were going to be using new and greater weapons against the United States if the war resumes. And right now, a lot of people are wondering, what are those new and greater weapon things? Or do they exist, or are they Chinese provided, or do they not exist? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
So this isn't the first time that we've heard this threat out of Iran. We've heard this threat before, and they said, we will use no weapons, inshallah. That's what they said. They said they'll also find some new methods of war to use. I'm not sure what that means, but apparently they have a new method. They just came up with a brand new war plan, apparently, in the midst of all this other chaos. So that's what they're saying. If Iran gets attacked again, they'll use these new weapons that we don't know anything about. The secret ones they keep in the back room for special occasions. But what are your thoughts? 42% said Iran means it will use the new Chinese weapons that it might have gotten from one source or another. 35% said Iran is bluffing to the extreme. And 16% said Iran is threatening to use a nuke. So right now, as far as we're aware, Iran does not have an operational nuke, and right now apparently their uranium, the enriched uranium, is currently under the ground. So they really don't have a way to use that. So I don't think nuclear is going to be an issue right now, at least. I think they mean new Chinese weapons. That's probably what they're talking about. And of course, that could be anything. It could be, Chinese man pads. It could be anything, possibly. It could be electronic warfare equipment, for all we know. But I would imagine China's probably given Iran some new goodies. So I wouldn't write this off completely. But to act like it's going to change the war or something, like because they got some new EW or something like that, that's not going to change the war. Iran's still going to get a thrashing, to say the least. And also, the U.S. is probably going to get a thrashing too, unfortunately, as well. So it's going to be a Thunderdome when it restarts. And whatever Chinese weapons they got, it's not going to save them. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have a feeling that's probably not Chinese weapons. I have a feeling it's probably those Verbas that we were talking about a good while ago, that we already had known earlier in the year that the Iranians had made a contract with the Russians to be supplied a couple of thousand Verbas, and I have a feeling that this is probably the new weapon. Russian arms shipments have not been interdicted by the United States whatsoever as they go through the Caspian Sea, and this would easily be provided to the Iranians in large numbers by the Russians because of their ease of supply to the Iranians through the Caspian Sea. So I have a feeling that the weapon probably isn't even Chinese, it's probably Russian, and if anything, it's probably this little deal, the Verba. But I would also have to add, folks, that man pads, as long as you operate your air scenarios properly, do not pose a threat whatsoever to the United States Air Force. Unless if you fly an aircraft at an incredibly low altitude at somewhat slower speeds right over one of these, then you're guaranteed to get shot down, which we saw many times almost happen in the actual armed conflict. As long as we don't fly at slow speeds, at incredibly low altitudes, man pads are easy to avoid and not have to deal with. But given the fact that the last time we were conducting actions against the Iranians, we were conducting low and slow gun runs with Super Hornets and whatnot, we might see that these verbas could actually be put to effect against the U.S. if we end up using absolutely bad tactics in the sorties that the Naval Air Arm and the U.S. Air Force conduct here in the future once the conflict begins again. So I would assume that this is probably the weapon they speak of. This would be the easiest provided, and we shouldn't be seeing any issues as long as we are operating our tactics properly against the Iranians in the air campaign. So I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. But I would have to say I'm still kind of doubting that they're probably Chinese, but who knows. Anyways, moving us on out of that, we have also been able to hear of some other interesting developments that have occurred within the area of the middle of the East. But before we get to the rest of this that we have out of the air defense fire that went off today in southern Iran and in Tehran, and also a little bit of additional news that we got out in the Arabian Sea about some photos from some U.S. Marines, I do want to make sure that we take a brief pause for a moment, because I've got to say, a huge thanks to everyone who has been watching so far.
Yes, a big, huge thanks to everybody that has tuned in tonight. I really appreciate it. It's been a great show tonight. We have not had no call-ins yet, but that should change soon, I'm sure. Hopefully we get some call-ins so tomorrow evening. We will be on tomorrow evening at 4:30. Make sure y'all don't miss it. We are going to also be on tomorrow night. between 10:30 and 11 Eastern Standard Time. But feel free to drop in. Feel free to drop your comments in on the show. Let me know what y'all think about the show. Let me know what y'all think about the Iran war. What do y'all think about what is next? What do y'all think is going to happen? I want to know y'all's comments and all y'all's thoughts about that. Also, I want to know y'all comments about this live call in stuff. Should we continue to do it? Should we not? Do y'all think it's worth keeping around? Are y'all interested about calling in and talking to the show? I know we don't have too many people watching yet, but I'm sure we're going to start getting more and more and more of a crowd here soon. So hopefully this call-ins will draw some people, I hope. But anyways, hope y'all have a wonderful, blessed night. We will see y'all tomorrow evening at 4:30.